Good morning. My name is Barbara Fuller. As Chair of the Board, I welcome you to this February 18th, 2025 working session of the Washtenaw County Board of Road Commissioners. Our office coordinator, Aaron Smith, will describe how our meetings operate, how to access the agenda, and how people may participate remotely. Aaron?
Thanks, Chair Fuller. There are multiple ways to make public comment during today's working session, whether you're joining us in person or virtually. If you're here in person and would like to make comment, please fill out the sign-in sheet now. If you're joining us virtually, we will ask you to raise your hand at the appropriate time in the agenda. If you're joining us virtually and are experiencing technical issues with audio or video during this meeting, submit a comment in the chat feature and our communications manager will help you troubleshoot. If you would like closed captioning during the meeting, you will have to manually change your settings. Click on the captions button and select show captions. The audio and video of this meeting is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be posted to our website in the next few days. And there are also printed copies of today's meeting agenda on the table near the front door. And now I'll turn it back over to Chair Fuller.
Thank you, Aaron. At this time, I now formally call this February 18th, 2025 working session of the Washtenaw County Board of Road Commissioners to order and ask Aaron to call the roll.
Chair Barb Fuller.
Present.
Vice Chair Rod Green and Commissioner Jeff Smers are absent today. Commissioner Gloria Yamas.
Present.
And Commissioner Joanne McCollum.
Present.
And then the following directors are in attendance: Managing Director Matt Washtenaw, our Assistant Director of Engineering Aaron Burkholz, our Director of Operations Adam Leip will be joining us in a little bit, and then Director of Finance Dan Ackerman.
Thank you. At this point, I ask for a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So move.
Support. Any additions, deletions, corrections? Seeing none, Aaron, if you would, please.
Commissioner Joanne McCollum.
Yes.
Commissioner Gloria Yamas.
Yes.
And Commissioner Burkholz.
Yes. Next, we have a time set aside for public comment. This is the time set aside on the agenda to receive comments from the public. This is not intended to be a period for dialogue. Each person will be allotted 3 minutes to address the board, and Aaron will explain how people may be recognized to offer comments.
Since this is a hybrid meeting with both in-person and virtual attendees, we will take turns between those attending in person and virtually. For our virtual attendees, we have provided some instructions on the screen on how to participate and make comment. If you're attending this meeting virtually and would like to make comment, please raise your hand now. If you dialed into the meeting from your phone, you can raise your hand by dialing *9. Our communications manager will unmute virtual participants with raised hands one at a time and will announce your username or the last 4 digits of your phone number when it is your turn to speak. And please share your name and address before beginning your comments. Then for our in-person attendees, we will start with those who signed up on the sign-in sheet as you walked in. If you didn't sign in, you're still welcome to make comment. Our communications manager will notify you when it is your turn.
Thank you, Aaron. Tiffany, I don't see anyone in the waiting room to speak.
No, Madam Chair.
Has anyone signed in?
No, Madam Chair.
All right, we will move on into the meat of the agenda this morning. And at this point, I will turn it over to Managing Director Matt Washtenaw.
Thank you, Chair Fuller. First on the agenda, we wanted to introduce some of our project managers. They are the faces of our lead on public interaction and running our projects for the summer. And we've had a lot of folks come to us in the last year or two, and wanted to make sure you knew who they were as well. So Aaron Burkholz, did you want to introduce?
Yeah, of course. Good morning.
Good morning.
Aaron Burkholz, Assistant Director of Engineering. Yeah, as Matt said, we've gone through some significant staff changes. And really what spurred that initially was the retirement of Cheryl Siddle. And since that point, the engineering department has gone through more staff changes over the last year and a half than I ever remember previous. And again, I've been here for many, many years, and I'm thankful, so thankful that we've been able to hire such a good group of project managers. And so again, without further ado, Jane Allen. Jane, if you don't mind coming up. And so Jane joined us, actually had previously worked for the city of Ann Arbor. And so, again, if you want to share a little bit about yourself, Jane.
Sure. Thank you so much. I joined.
Please identify yourself. This is being recorded and people can watch it later.
Okay, I am Jane Allen, project manager at the Road Commission. I did join last October. And was happy to attend the pancake breakfast that I saw some of your faces at. Yeah, as Burke said, I did work at the city of Ann Arbor, and prior to that, I worked at the Road Commission for Monroe County for 14 years. That was my first professional job. I started as an engineering assistant, which I did a lot of inspection and testing, and then moved into the project management after I got my degree. And then I had since moved back to Ann Arbor. This is where I was born and raised, went to all the local schools. So I always wanted to stay close to my roots in my community, and an opportunity at the city did open up, and I did work there for almost 10 years. I started in the design group for 3, and then I moved over to project management. And now I'm at the Washtenaw Road Commission, where I live, and I'm really enjoying it. I've taken advantage of a lot of the training that's been offered that, it brings me back to more of a rural analysis of some of the roads and some of my experience on programs that I had done many years ago. I'm trying to get back into expertise, value for that for the road commission, so I can help with any projects that come up. I'm currently working on the Venus Road project. That's a repaving of a gravel road. It's a township line road. So I'm working with the 2 townships, also 2 contractors. We have E.T. McKenzie won the bid for that, but we have postponed construction from last year to this because of a gas utility that we needed to take care of. We're still working on the coordination of the schedule. We don't have a start date from DTE yet. I'm also working, I took over some non-motorized pathway projects from Michelle and her transportation team. So I'm working on those, and also getting involved in project managing of the Gunther Road Bridge replacement. And then, like I said, helping out where I can as we get back into this construction season, and then hoping to get more involved in a lot of design work for future projects.
Thanks, Jane.
Yeah.
Welcome,
Thank you.
welcome.
Thank you so much.
And I'll say Jane has created one of the most spectacular workspaces that I've seen here, again, during my long tenure. It is really great. I may have her come and decorate my workspace because hers is so nice. It's just a very nice space to chat in and for her to work in, so I appreciate that about her.
We'll
So-
all pay you a visit, I'm sure.
Yes.
So we'll have Kevin Dubnicki come up. So again, Kevin is another one of our new project managers. He previously had worked for a company called PSI as a geotechnical lead. So Kevin's got a great understanding of subsurface soils and materials testing. But Kevin, why don't you share a little bit with the board about yourself?
My name's Kevin Dubnicki. I'm project manager here. Here just about a year and a month is how long it's been. It's just not very long, but now I'm an expert in the county. So everything. The first jobs that I was thrown into were a couple roundabout projects were a lot of fun. Yeah, I learned a lot. I worked on the Miller and Z project just down the road here from the Road Commission in Whitaker and Willis. Learned a lot about the projects, the contractors, dealing with the public, the good and the bad, and it was a really good experience all the way around. This year, I'm going to be working on some of our 2025 PM projects, which is going to be our federally funded projects. We have about 10 that are on the slate right now that we are trying to get out, and they're going to be out for bid this spring. Also going to be continuing to work on 5 Points in Dexter for a new roundabout over there. That's going to be a 2026, 2027 project. Working on a more current project, or Dexter, Chelsea, and Island Lake roundabout that's going to be going in, a lot of the design functions for that and how we're going to keep everybody happy and make things work as best we can, and hopefully improve that intersection near the viaduct over there to work more smoothly. Gonna have dip my toes into the border trail for the D4, it sounds like. We're still working out the details on that. That's still working through.
What was that again, please?
The border trail,
Ah,
D4. So I've been helping out with that, but that's been slow going. We're kind of at a little bit of a standstill with that, with some of the railroad requirements, which are pretty lengthy and involved to be able to get through that. So, I guess a little bit about myself. I grew up in Jackson, went to school at MSU, worked for Jackson County Road Commission for a short stint while I was going to college for summer work. worked, as Burke mentioned, over at PSI and had 23 years and there. And people ask me what I do. I say I play with dirt. You know, it's my job, play with dirt. So have an extensive knowledge in the geotechnical background and really happy to come and share my knowledge and background and experience here and apply that to the county to make things better. So that's a little bit about myself.
Great, welcome.
Thanks, Kevin.
Glad you're here, Kevin.
And
Thank
Kevin had
you.
jokingly said that he's a veteran employee here now. I'll say that, again, one of the first projects Kevin worked on was the roundabout at Miller and Zeeb. And very quickly, we started to treat Kevin like he had been here, like I've been here for years. We just took it for granted that Kevin was a relatively new employee. But again, his aptitude to jump into that and to learn so quickly, that's why we just saw him as one of our colleagues that was a veteran employee. So credit to Kevin for that. And certainly, last but not least, Felix Weber Bailey. So again, Felix has been at the Road Commission, but only recently has been promoted into the role as project manager. So Felix, why don't you share a little bit about your history?
Felix Weber Bailey. I'm a project manager here at the Road Commission. Been here for a little over 3 years. I started out as a summer helper on the chip seal crew. I was a flagger, and I kind of seemed to enjoy that a little too much. And I stayed for the full 6 months of temp employment and then came back the following summer. And did that for another couple months. And then the engineering tech role opened up and I applied for that, got it. And, about the same time, I was just graduating from Washtenaw Community College with an associate's in construction management. And I took advantage of the Road Commission's tuition reimbursement to get my bachelor's at Eastern in construction management, which I just got in December. And then now I'm a project manager and been assigned to the countywide hot mix asphalt resurfacing program, which is taken over for Mike Burnbeck on that. So far, that's all I've kind of delved into, kind of supporting in other roles, kind of supporting with the pavement marking program for traffic and safety. Yeah, so have some inspection experience, some hands-on labor experience, so I'm just still pretty young, so still learning, it's lots to learn, so. Road
Look forward to
Commission's
having
great.
you here for 30 years.
Thank you, Felix.
Yeah, and
Thanks.
Felix takes great pictures. One or two are featured in the annual report, which were in your packet, so
I took
you do a
quite
great
few
job.
pictures last
I
year.
will say, our project management team does a great job of working with the communications team to get a lot of the details conveyed through our website and our updates. So kudos to the team on that regard.
No, and I want to thank the board for the support of that. As Felix mentioned, the tuition reimbursement program. Again, through that program, he is a real life example of us growing our own project managers. Again, he mentions as he started here as a summer helper in the operations department, Felix quickly showed himself to be a hard worker, to be part of the team. You know, as he continued in that role and then had the opportunity to work as an engineering technician, the operations staff, as I spoke to him, they all thought very highly of him and saw the potential in him. And again, it's been a pleasure to work with Felix and we're all very proud of him earning his degree recently from Eastern Michigan. So, yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you much. Appreciate the opportunity to introduce the new project managers.
And we won't forget also Nate Murphy and Michelle Ford, who are also integral to the work that the project staff does, project manager staff does, so.
You want to say anything, Nate? I shouldn't have phrased it that way. Nate, come say a few words.
Hello, I'm Nate Murphy, Senior Project Manager. Happy to be here this morning. Happy to have the new staff that we have. It's been a great team put together. We're missing one other one, well, should we say Nicholas?
Everybody knows
Nico Robeson is absent today. He's working remote. We will introduce him at another
Okay.
time, but he's also a new face here, and it's been a great team, and I've enjoyed working with all of them, so.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank-
Yeah, and again-
Michelle Ford's the project manager too.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll be there in a second.
Yep.
Okay.
And again-
Dodge that.
Who's up next?
Michelle.
You're gonna hear a lot from Michelle.
Okay.
And I'll mention, so again, when I returned to the road commission in the fall of 2018, had the opportunity, was very blessed to come back here to work. Then was further blessed with the hiring of Nate and Michelle as project managers who worked for me. Both of them are in senior project roles now. So Nate oversees our design and construction staff, and Michelle oversees our traffic and safety staff. And that includes the sign crew and the signal crew. So again, I count myself very fortunate to work with staff and individuals such as these. It's really a pleasure. It sounds cliched, but when I'm interviewing a candidate for a position here, what I tell them is what motivates me to do my best work each day is the people that I work with. I greatly enjoy the people that I work with here. So,
They're making you look pretty good, Aaron.
yes, they are. Very much. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks for
Thank
all that.
you.
Any questions, commissioners?
I just want to say,
Sure.
thank you for introducing the project managers and how the movement after Cheryl left, how that movement is a positive direction. And I really enjoyed, seeing Felix just starting with the flagging and things like that. I think that's a great story to tell about working at the road commission and how far you can go. So thank you for that, Erin.
Of course.
Yep, thank you. I appreciated getting to know everybody, having people introduced. I did get a sneak preview. I saw some of the people on the 14th on the virtual. So I was like faces I hadn't seen before yet. So
Sure.
thank you.
Okay.
All right.
All
Thank
set?
you.
Thanks, Aaron.
All right, next on our agenda, I would like to invite up Michelle Ford.
Mhm.
And she's going to give a presentation on roadside maintenance and safety.
All right, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Identify yourself. for
I am
the-
Michelle Ford. I am the Senior Project Manager for our Traffic and Safety Department. Sorry, I just gotta log in now because was waiting for that. So I have been in this role for not quite a year and a half now. I came from the construction and design. I created one of the vacancies we were now available to have other people come in. I've been with the road commission almost 6 years. In about 2 weeks, it'll be 6 years. Previous to that, I was a consultant out east in Virginia and the District of Columbia. I was born and raised here in Michigan and went to Michigan State, go green.
Go blue.
And then after I graduated, I got married. My husband spent a career in the Air Force. And so we moved throughout the United States. And after he retired, we decided to come back home here to Michigan. And it created an opportunity for me to come to the road commission.
Great.
We're very excited to have you.
Thank you.
When did you get your PE? Didn't you do that since you've?
Yeah, so I am an unusual story for the PE. Typically, people get that when you graduate school, you take the first exam, which is the EIT, Fundamentals of Engineering exam. And then about 4 years later, you take your PE exam once you've gained some experience. For me, when I graduated, I worked for a short time as an engineer, and then I took 20 years off to raise my children. And so that didn't allow me the required supervision that you have to have. So once I went back as an engineer, got that. When I came here to the road commission as a consultant, you don't have a lot of time to study. So I came here to the road commission with a personal goal of taking advantage of the work-life balance that this job allows, studied, and I got my PE when I was 53 years old. Let's just say I was the oldest person in the room.
And probably the wisest.
I do have to say that my years of experience, I think, really helped me with that exam because a lot of people there they didn't have the life experience and the work experience that I think really helped me with that. And so that allowed me to have a lot of opportunity to further myself and go into the senior project manager role. So.
It's a great story too.
Thank you. All right. Oh yeah, I gotta plug in. See, we're all friendly.
An engineer in the
here.
house.
Engineer in the house. Oh, okay.
Who is that?
That is my daughter
Oh.
and it worked a minute ago. So now do I need to extend? All right. Let me look here. All right. I was in here. Barb saw me at work, didn't it,
It
Barb?
did, it did.
All right, so I may need my IT person to come over here, Josh, and help me with this.
Seven minutes early, so you're good.
Okay,
Good on
so I get to talk an extra 7 minutes.
you.
Okay. If throughout this, if anyone has questions, just
Jump in.
jump in. Okay. And I will do my best to answer. Or I will call on Matt or Aaron or Adam or whoever to help me if needed. Oh, you wanna go back? Why is it?
You inspire me to look at what I'm gonna do for the next 20 years.
Are you guys controlling that? Not letting me control it. I know. Let's try again. All right. And try again.
There it is.
There we go. I can go back and forth.
I think we're ready.
Okay.
Welcome back, everybody.
Perfect timing.
All right. So today I am here. Adam is going to jump in a little while and help me talk about roadside maintenance and safety. So like I said, I am Senior Project Manager for our Traffic and Safety Department. Today, we're going to concentrate on that safety part of the traffic and safety. So we're going to talk about some crash statistics, safe system approach. We'll explain that to you. The things that we've done so far to address some safety concerns, and then what more can we do? So let's look at our crash statistics. So first thing that we want to talk about is our nomenclature. So if we look at the dictionary, an accident is an unfortunate event resulting especially from carelessness or ignorance. But a crash is breaking to pieces by or as if by collision. So they mean different things. So an accident implies that no one is at fault, nothing could have been done. And that is typically not the case with our crashes that happen. And so there is a big movement to change how we refer to it. These are traffic crashes. They're not accidents. So there's a lot of information on this. So what this is crashes as compiled by Watts. They put out a report each year. And you'll see that this goes through 2023. That's because there's a delay in getting some of those crash statistics. So this is our most recent report, and it shows the last 5 years. This is for Washtenaw County minus the cities. So this is for WCRC, but it does also include our MDOT roads. That's just how Watts reports these statistics. So if you look at it, you can see that our total crashes are going up. That makes sense. We have a lot of people on the roads, a lot of people driving aggressively, distracted, all of that. And we're going to concentrate on the fatal and serious injury crashes today. Those are the ones we're most concerned about. If you look at those trends across the 5 years, the fatals are staying fairly steady. Now, while that's, when you think of how many more crashes we have, that our fatals aren't going up, that's a good thing. However, it's still, the number of people dying has not really changed. And our serious injury crashes are kind of on the rise a little bit. And the underneath, you'll see that it shows the different types of crashes that we're having. Lane departure, we'll go into that a little bit more, at the intersections, if they involve pedestrians, bicycles, animals. You see those animal crashes are steadily increasing. Everyone knows there's deer everywhere. Thankfully, those tend not to be very serious crashes. And then just one thing to point out is these are the number of crashes. This is not the number of people that are affected. So for instance, in 2023, those 14 fatal crashes resulted in 32 people dying.
Wow.
And 99 serious injury crashes resulted in 232 serious injuries. So multiple people in the cars, or one crash could have multiple cars involved.
So the number of fatal crashes
Mhm.
should not be considered fatalities.
Correct. That's the number of crash occurrences.
Okay,
And so that's just as we're thinking about this, because I'm going to give you most statistics are a number of crashes. So keep in your head, that's more people are involved with that typically.
do you
And-
also track fatalities though?
Watts has that in their statistics.
Okay,
Just because of the way we tend to report from a traffic and safety standpoint, we're trying to eliminate the number of crashes. And, you know, we can go in and look at fatalities if you want. Like, for instance, I pulled the statistic, but the Watts report does report it both ways. It shows the number of crashes and the number of people involved. Yes.
So how do they get the information about the crashes? Once it's determined by each organization and they send a report in?
This
Whether
is
it's a-
typically, this pulls from the Michigan State Police,
Okay,
the database, their reported crashes. And I will show you somewhat how we do that as well.
great,
But
thank you.
each police agency, once they're on scene, whoever's responsible, whether it be the sheriff or the township, public safety, whoever it is, they have to report the crash on a standard form that gets submitted to Michigan State Police. And then they are the record keepers for the state.
Right. So it's not necessarily that Michigan State Police responded to this crash. It's that
Hmm.
the local agencies have to report it to the state.
anything, Joanne? No. I have a question. We have our asset management strategy based on rating of roads.
Mhm.
How do these statistics factor into how we look at prioritization of our work? I mean, I'm well acquainted with M52 in Pleasant Lake, the signal that went in there,
Mhm.
how many years ago?
So I'll go into this a little bit more later as
Okay.
well, but we also have a way to look at crashes, and I'll explain that to you. But to answer your question somewhat, we have our asset management plan, our paving projects. Any projects that we do, we look at, are there safety improvements that can be made during that project? And we try to incorporate those. And then sometimes we just do single standalone safety projects if we identify an area that needs more care.
Okay,
Okay. But every project, we do look at safety elements and try to incorporate.
I just wondered what factor was driving project prioritization and how? But
Also different funding sources. Some funding sources we can target, and Michelle will get into that, is
Okay.
we can go after different types of funding for safety enhancements
Okay.
specifically.
I'll start holding my questions.
That's
Oh,
okay.
please, this is
That's
a dialogue. This is
That's
always
right, that's
intended to
right.
be a dialogue.
And hopefully I'll be able to answer your question.
So,
Gloria,
the only, I don't know, it's just kind of an observation because I looked at this prior to this meeting. And I noticed, of course, during the COVID years, things were a little down, but now that more people are on the road,
Mhm.
it makes sense that it would go up, but I mean, it's gone up so drastically. I mean, 2019 wasn't exactly COVID year.
Now,
20.
interestingly enough, during the COVID year, you can see that the total crashes went down, which made sense because there were fewer cars on the road. However, our fatals did not go down. And there's speculation as to why that crash rate went up, because now you have fewer crashes, but the same number of fatalities. And there's only speculation. No one on the road, you can go faster. You know, that's one of the big ones. They think people, I think because they felt, you know, they were the only person there, that they were a little bit more reckless. And then there's speculation as to, you know, now after you see our number of crashes has kind of increased significantly. That is a nationwide trend. We are not special here in Washtenaw County. So don't think that like all of a sudden that we're like terribly irresponsible. It's just that's the nationwide trend. And so everyone is trying to address that. Just to give you a snapshot in time, as of last week, here in Michigan, we had 27 fewer fatalities than at this time last year, but there were 27 more serious injuries. So MDOT puts out statistics every week on where we stand compared to last year. So as of last week, that's where we were. A little bit down on fatalities, a little bit up on serious injuries.
Thank you.
So here's some crash statistics. Just so you know, this is for the entire Washtenaw County, including our cities, MDOT roads, and WCRC jurisdictional roads. What this does is this shows you kind of the type of accidents that are happening. Whether or not it was a single motor vehicle, those tend to be those lane departure. Lane departure means that they either crossed the center line, they departed their lane, or they went off the side of the road. So some you getting out of your lane. That's what those single motor vehicle accidents tend to be. Angle or head-on left turn tend to be intersections. You know, you get hit at an angle, T-bone, something like that. Side swipe, a lot of times that's passing behavior. Head-on, sometimes that is also a lane departure because they're head-on. Rear end, we see those any number of places. We do see quite a few of them at an intersection. Someone stopped at the intersection, someone doesn't stop behind him, or you're trying to turn, you know, you've slowed down, someone hit you from behind, and then some other unknowns. So you see our number one here in Washtenaw County is single motor vehicle. So that's the lane departure that we would like to.
I would also add the rear end also can be a cause of congestion. So if these statistics include the freeway, so if you're congested on the freeway and brake lights and you don't see the stoppage, not paying attention, that also can be a cause of rear end as well.
Correct. All right, so this little bar graph here, I know there's a lot of information. So this, we're looking at fatal crash statistics. And so one of the things that we often get asked is, well, how many people were drunk or on drugs? So this just gives you a snapshot. For each year, that orange bar to the left shows of these fatal crashes, what percentage of them involve drugs or alcohol. And then we go into the different types of crashes, how many of those fatals involve lane departures, they were at an intersection, had pedestrians, bicycles, or animals. Thankfully, you see the pedestrian, bicycle, animal tend to be very low. Our highest percentage of fatal crashes are those lane departures. You see over half of our fatalities are in lane departure things, which is why we would like to concentrate. Note that these can overlap. So you have someone who was killed in a lane departure crash could have also been on drugs or alcohol. So there could be a little overlap there.
Commissioner Yamas, do you know if they've started to track cell phone distraction or distracting driving in the lane departure, or that's not being tracked yet?
I believe that is something that the officers can report on, but I think that is sometimes a difficult thing to determine. And so if they know it's the case, then they put it on, but I'm not sure how accurate that particular
Yeah.
statistic is.
I was just mentioning, the UD 10 does allow for the to the officer to report distracted driving, but it's oftentimes it's very difficult to understand whether it be the driver not admitting or, you know, no way to prove it.
Yeah.
That's a very difficult one
Right.
to categorize.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, so now we have the same thing for serious injuries. I think it's interesting that in the serious injuries, far fewer of them involve drugs or alcohol. But you see, once again, our largest percentage is those lane departure crashes. And so our fatals and serious injuries, by and large, are coming from those lane departure crashes. So that's something that we would like to focus on. So to get our mindset in order, this is just a little 1-minute video that I saw at a safety training recently, and I thought that it kind of puts things in perspective. Okay, we're gonna see if it works.
So last year, 213 people died on our roads. What do you think would be a more acceptable number?
Acceptable. 70 maybe, probably 70.
Can you sound 70? Actually, this is what 70 people looks like. So now what do you think would be a more acceptable number?
0. 0.
Okay, so the point of that video for me is to show that these are not just statistics, that these are real people that are dying on the road. And there are people who have families and who have lives, and we should be concerned with doing as much as we can to try to lower the number. So there is a big nationwide initiative, somewhat worldwide, towards 0 deaths. And so they were focusing on fatal and serious injury. Serious injury, another way to put it, is typically an incapacitating or life-changing injury. So these are not minor injuries. These are, you know, major injuries that can change someone's life. So you'll see it referred to different ways: vision 0, road to 0, towards 0 deaths, but the message is the same for all of them.
Commissioner McCollum. Michelle, I see that you are going to go into some safe system approach and things like that. Around where I live, US 12, by the American Center for Mobility in West Willow area, there is that US 12 road where people are driving 55 plus. And under the bridge, we have had several fatal or serious crashes because, and it usually is the lane departure because there's nothing in between the cars going opposite directions. And so I know that's the MDOT area, and some of the explanation is that it's not enough room to really put anything in the middle, or the road is, you can't change the road or anything. So I would like to hear, you know, as your presentation proceeds, is there something that can be done in that area to prevent the fatalities that we have had there?
I know that as part of our US 12 project that we had some funds earmarked from MDOT, and we administered those funds for them. We did add street lighting in that area. That is a huge help. I do believe that we put centerline corrugations in there as well. Like you said, it's an MDOT road for us. There is some limited, but putting a barrier in between is a challenge there because sometimes the barrier can become, an obstacle and a crash hazard
Yeah.
as well. So there are roads that we are limited, and so that's why we have to look for opportunities to find what can we do, on those things.
Thank you.
All right, so this is kind of busy. So SEMCOG has developed a transportation safety plan. And it was developed through several of the stakeholders, the Transportation Safety Action Committee, the Transportation Safety Task Force, our Transportation Coordination Council, other regional stakeholders. And so they've developed regional safety targets, and they have 5 different safety performance measures that they look at. And they've developed a non-linear target setting methodology. So what that means is, you see over here on the left, let me get my laser pointer going. Over here, the red bars are the actual number of fatalities that we've had each of these years from 1995 through the most recent 2023. You'll see it comes down fairly substantially here. That's due mostly in part to increased safety measures within the vehicles. We've got airbags, we've got, automatic braking, all different things that have really helped bring down the number of fatalities. So that's what the red are. Those are actual numbers. The blue is a 5-year rolling average. So then what this green is here, that's the non-linear targets that they're showing. They're saying, okay, how do we get to 0? You see that it isn't just a straight line. So the thought is we're gonna develop different countermeasures. We're gonna put some of these safety things in place. There's going to be technology introduced into the vehicles, your self-driving cars, those kind of things, which are supposed to increase safety. So it takes a while for those to get implemented. As they get implemented, these are going to drop, and then down there at 2050, we're at 0. Now, SEMCOG will tell you this is what they call their aspirational goals, knowing that this is tough to get to. In fact, if you look here, we're trending up. We're going in the wrong direction. And so we're just gonna keep implementing our safety plans. We're gonna work, with everyone that we can to try to get those down. Looking to see, so that's where we are with fatalities. Yes?
Commissioner McCollum.
Yes, and I know that MDOT and everyone's concerned about the crashes and fatalities. However, if we're using the same thing, is there changes? Because if we just use the same thing, it's not gonna work, right?
I think that there is a real push right now to make those changes. And so that's one of the things here at the Road Commission is that I have made it my little mission to look for ways, what changes can we make as a Road Commission? Where do we have the power to make some of these changes? And so we're looking at those. I think everyone is doing that throughout the state, so they can make the changes and then work with the other stakeholders so that collectively we can start to get those averages down. Because you're correct, if we don't do anything,
Or we keep doing the same
or
thing.
we keep doing the same thing.
So that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
There are a lot of social issues that are related to these crash statistics. But as Michelle moves on with her presentation, you're gonna see we have a role in the safe system approach. There are things that we can do, but we will get pushback on. But we have to make a decision. What's our priority? Safety or dealing with pushback? So that's going to be, we'll be at a crossroads here. If we continue to do the same things, you can expect similar or worse results. So we, as a organization, need to really think hard and long on what our philosophy is going to be moving forward. And that's the basis of this presentation.
Thank you.
If I could just remind us, the most recent example of what you're describing in terms of pushback is this community's affection for trees.
Yes, you
And-
may see some of that in the coming slides.
And we actually had someone say, I don't care if someone hits a tree and dies, that's on them. Leave the tree alone. So it's not as though it's some kind of subtle, soft accusation that's made. We've had people come up and actually get in our faces here, so we have to be
So,
mindful of it.
So we have to decide as an organization.
Understood.
How we approach it.
How we approach
And
it.
I think one of the lessons learned that the organization learned hard was how we communicate it ahead of time, how we approach the subject. So I think that's part of some of the organizational policy changes that we made with public engagement, the tree removal policy. And so we'll get into that, some of that.
Okay.
But good discussion.
So that was for fatalities, this slide. The next one is for serious injuries. We have the same thing. Our red is the actual numbers. There was quite a decrease, once again, most likely due to safety measures implemented in vehicles. And we're kind of holding steady, kind of going up a little bit. So same as the fatalities. We aren't really making a lot of progress. So
And again, these numbers are Southeast Michigan.
that's correct.
Yes.
That is correct. Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't.
No,
point
I
that
just
out
want
for
to
these-
make
these
sure
Last two groups, that's
we're
correct.
all on the same page.
So how do we get there? When you talk about what changes can we make, there is Federal Highways has what they call a safe system approach that they are implementing, and we would like to make sure that we use that same philosophy as well. And one of the large components of it is recognizing the fact that the majority of fatal crashes involve human error. People make mistakes. So 93% of all of them are a result of driver error. Human factors, it could be things like impairment, but it also could be age. We have young drivers, we have older drivers, people with medical conditions, all sorts of things. And then, of course, we have the distracted driving, all those risky behaviors, aggressive driving, those kind of things. Some stuff we can't do anything about, but we're gonna try to accommodate those human errors as much as we can. So we'll talk about that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's okay, Commissioner. Yes. What did you say the roadway factors were?
Roadway factors would be things like, snow and ice on the roadway.
Okay.
Sometimes
Geometry.
geometry, yes, you have curves, things like that.
Limited sight distance.
Yeah, limited sight distance, thank you, Matt,
Thank you.
that type of thing. And once again, those are sometimes things we can do, we can make changes. So the safe system approach, this is the current graphic that Federal Highways is using. So the message is there's a vision of eliminating deaths and serious injuries from our road system. So we do that through all of these different components. Safer vehicles, they're working on putting things in. Safer speeds. Unfortunately, here in the state of Michigan, we have less control over that. Safer roads, we do have some control over that. Post-crash care, that's getting the emergency vehicles to the crash and then being able to get them to some sort of medical care as quickly as possible. And then safer people, and that's encouraging people to be more responsible in what they're doing. And then the things I like are around the outside, which are that death and serious injuries are unacceptable. In my mind, I've established that for myself. Humans make mistakes. We know that's true. Humans are vulnerable. That means that physically we are vulnerable. We can only take so much physically. Responsibility is shared. This is something that it's going to involve everyone getting involved. Safety is proactive. Traditionally, safety has been reactive. You follow the crashes. We're going to look more at risk than following the crashes as much. And redundancy is crucial. So we're gonna aim to eliminate all those fatal and serious. We're gonna try to accommodate those human mistakes. We want to keep the impacts on the human body at tolerable levels and then be proactive to that safety. So this is a nice graphic that Federal Highways has put out, kind of illustrating redundancy. So if we have a layered approach, we see all of our components, the post-crash care, safe roads, safe speeds, safe vehicles, safe users. And so if one part fails, hopefully another part will pick up the slack and you won't have someone go all the way through. Only when all of the layers fail, well then you kind of get that Swiss cheese approach, go through, and that someone may end up having that serious or fatal injury. So we're doing our best to put those layers in place.
And our role is again, on that safe roads
Mhm.
portion. That's
Right.
where we can make a difference.
Right, exactly. So what are some of the things that we've done? So MDOT has something that they call a local safety initiative. So they come, look at our Washtenaw County Road Commission roads. They review them, they look at crash histories, they identify locations of concern, give us some recommendations on countermeasures, and then they perform field visits. And so we get a report annually each year that identifies, I think 19 locations were identified in the report we received this year. And it helps us to prioritize. If it's to the point that MDOT is looking at it, then, you know, we already know those locations, but it also helps us as we're applying for grants and things like that. If we can say, oh, well, this was included on MDOT's local safety initiative, it sometimes helps us be more competitive in those grants and stuff. So that's
So
something.
like in external audit of
Yes.
the safety of our road network, which is really nice to have
Yeah.
experts that look at statewide, come to our local system
Mhm.
and review patterns, review statistics, and then make recommendations. So it's very helpful and it's very,
Right.
we've used it for a number of years.
Yes. So we get that each year. We also do our best to take advantage of grants. So in the last 5 years, the Traffic and Safety Department has brought more than 20 million in grants. These ones here are focused on safety. So there's a Highway Safety Improvement Program, HSIP. So for instance, the picture there, Miller Road at Zeeb Road Roundabout, that was an HSIP project. There typically are larger funding percentages. A lot of our federal funding is an 80-10 close to split. HSIP is, I think, a 90-10.
It is, but oftentimes the fix is a lot more costly than the funding available. So
That is true.
sometimes
There
it ends
is a
up being
limit on
more
that funding.
50-50.
Yes, that is true. That is absolutely true. So at the Miller Road and Zeeb Road, that intersection had a history of serious crashes. And so the roundabout, remember, we're focusing on serious and fatal. Roundabouts, sometimes you're still gonna get some of those little fender bender type crashes. They tend to be minor, and it's quite rare to have a serious or fatal in a roundabout.
And the other advantage of the roundabout is you don't have a green phase where people are going 50 miles an hour.
Mhm.
You have them all slowing down to a reasonable speed. We suggest 15.
Yes,
But
that's
you know,
our
it's
suggestion.
20 miles an hour could be up to
Right.
going through the roundabout, which is a lot more tolerable for our human bodies to have an impact with the safety of our cars. The lower speed ends up being just property damage. Whereas if this was a signal and somebody ran a red light, you're looking at a T-bone at 50 miles an hour that generally results in serious injury or fatality. So that's oftentimes why we will look at the roundabout solution, because it really does lend to a safe system approach.
So we also have high-risk rural roadways program that does focus on our rural roadways. Sometimes we end up with intersection things for that. For instance, our Dexter Town Hall road cut was part of that program, our hill cut. We also use this a lot of times for things like centerline corrugations or upgraded signage, things like that. The congestion mitigation and air quality program, CMAC, it often has a safety result because if we're upgrading signals, coordinating the signals so things are flowing better, you get less of that stop and go, which can cause rear end accidents, things like that at intersections. Also, many of our CMAC projects end up as roundabout projects because we're trying to mitigate, and there's quite a good safety result with that.
The upcoming Island Lake and Dexter Chelsea intersection improvement is gonna be a roundabout, but we're also coordinating the signals along that corridor as well. So it's a combination.
Right. So those are just some of the grants that we have tried to take advantage of for safety. We also have put centerline corrugations in many locations where we've done this fairly strategically so far. We will probably work to do it a little bit more widespread because it is a very good proven safety measure according to federal highways. Usually their statistics, 44 to 64% reduction in head-on and fatal and serious injury crashes with centerline corrugations. Yes?
Commissioner McCollum.
Yes, and Michelle, this is what you were talking about. That's on the US 12 under,
Yes.
going under the bridge. Okay.
Yes, and so what they do is they go in and mill out, a pattern, little divots in that, so when you drive over it, it can be kind of loud and startling. And so the thought is if people are drifting, then it kind of wakes them up, and lets them know, oops, and go over the.
I'll also add, one of the things we're very proactive about is pavement markings.
Yeah.
So making sure that pavement markings are vibrant, because a lot of the newer cars, you have lane assists. So it will help you steer and keep the car between the lanes, and it will self-correct. What takes some adjusting as a driver, I know.
You're looking at me,
I feel that. Exactly. So, but these are some of the features that are gonna drive that curve down. But our role in that is making sure our roadways have that vibrant stripe so that we do take advantage of what the cars are built to do, so.
And not only the vibrancy, but the width of them, because we, in the past, traditionally used 4-inch wide yellow and white lines. We usually only used a 6-inch wide white line if there was, say, bicycle traffic on the side. Well, these new driver assist cars recognize the 6-inch alt. So we have now 6-inch yellow and 6-inch white everywhere to help with those cars. And you get the added benefit of people can see them better and all of that, so.
And hopefully the reflectivity at nighttime as well, especially for our rural network. That's a big, push as well.
Yeah.
Felix is nodding his head because he followed the paint truck for many years, and
Felix
continues to help
ran
with
our countywide pavement marking program
Now,
last
no,
year.
Go to Felix.
He did, and he is our go-to expert on pavement marking. So this year, as he's leading the countywide HMA contract, he is gonna be leading our long line, which is, your long lines, your longitudinal lines. And he is going to be getting our new engineering tech who replaced him in traffic and safety up to speed on the entire program so that Jack can eventually take over for him.
As someone who drives the rural roads, can't tell you how important these painted markings are. And even the rumble strips on the white line, which I call the fog line because it saves you in a snowstorm or dense fog.
Yes.
Where
And-
there's no other lighting except your headlights,
Yes.
which is something.
And we're exploring new materials to use that will retain that reflectivity longer, because right now you're maybe get a year out of them and we have to repaint continuously. We have we literally paint millions of miles of pavement marking every year. I was shocked when Felix brought me the numbers and I was like, I do you have too many zeros in that? But no, it goes into the millions of miles of, because of, you know, everything has 3, 4, 5, 9.
Right.
Yeah.
The other part for us that's also a challenge is all the preventative maintenance. So every time we do 100 miles of chip seal, we have to paint it that year, but then with chip seal and the fog seal, you have to come back and paint it more frequently. So it's another challenge. Do you put,
And we are exploring this year a new material to use on the chip seal that we think will last a little bit longer.
great,
Because we've been using standard waterborne paint. We're gonna try thermoplastic and see if we can get longer, better reflectivity out of that.
you pay a little more, but it may be worth it.
We're doing a cost life cycle analysis, and I think that we're actually a little bit better off because we'll have to paint less often. If it works, we're doing basically a trial run this year.
Inevitably, our paint budgets are gonna go up, and that's just part of the cost. So that we do our part for safety on the roadways.
And in the grand scheme of things, it's a very inexpensive,
Costs.
low cost for really a good result. Like you said, on the rural roads at night, it's very important to have that reflectivity.
And the fog seal now makes those lines jump in a way that they didn't.
Yeah.
Yes, the
used to.
contrast is
It's wonderful. Yeah.
amazing.
So one of the other things that we can do is that we have done is enhance signage. So this is a street view of North Territorial Road of what it did look like. We had a curve. You see there on the left, there's a small target arrow. That is what the requirement is. We were fulfilling what the requirement was.
I will also point out, this is a example where it was recently chip sealed and you can see the white lines fade over time, and that's why we've got to keep going back to it.
Right. So in this particular location, we went in and we did some enhanced signage. So we put chevrons throughout that, and then we added reflective strips to the post. So that really does help that pop out at night, keep those signs new. We do have in our sign shop, they are working year round, replacing old signs to maintain that reflectivity. So we have I believe we're on about a 7-year cycle for those signs that require the reflectivity. So your chevrons like this, your stop signs, your curve ahead signs.
Warnings,
Warning
anything black and
signs.
yellow.
Right. Those kind of things that we want to really pop out at people at night. It's important that they maintain that reflectivity. And there's also requirements for that we're staying ahead of.
And updated stats in our annual report, I was corrected by Michelle and others that said we now have over 40,000 signs out on our roadways. So that's a
Well, see,
huge
here we
number.
went from 1 to how many? So
Right.
we're adding signs all the time.
Right.
Is there a regulation on the kind of yellow? I mean, there's
Mhm.
that limey yellow, which to me is a starker contrast with black than this.
There is a lot of that is dictated through the manual on uniform traffic control devices.
Okay.
And I hope I'm correct in saying is that limey yellow we tend to use for pedestrian type facilities. So you're gonna see it at crosswalks, school zones, those types of things. Whereas on a roadway warning, they're maintaining more of the yellow black. The other is called yellow green.
It's more neon than this is.
Yeah.
Correct.
So FHWA's crash statistics say with the chevrons, you get about a 25% reduction in nighttime crashes. So we also have installed high friction surface treatment. It's usually installed in curves. It increases traction a little bit, and we do include this in many of our safety projects. This picture here was our first time that we used it, which was at Ridge and Hack Roads. And so you can see they put down kind of a tarry material. It's kind of squeegeed on by
Like
hand.
epoxy.
Yeah, and then they put an aggregate over it to give it that little bit of traction. And it seems to work pretty well. I mean, so.
It's very expensive,
Yes.
but I liken it to a permanent chip sealed.
Right, and so we do it only within those curves. So right now, we have a safety project that is ongoing, and, as soon as the weather allows in the spring, we've got some curves, that we're gonna be putting this in. We also want to, as far as the whole safety thing goes, concentrate on our vulnerable road users, pedestrians and bicyclists. So we do have a requirement to spend at least 1% of our Michigan transportation funds on non-motorized, and so we track that every year. Some of the ways that we do that are through ramp upgrades at crosswalks to make sure that they're compliant with the American with Disabilities Act. We have been adding a lot of pedestrian accessible signals. So what that means is you go to a push button and it's audible. So someone who has low sight or is blind, then first of all, they'll have a tone so they can locate it. But then when they push it, it alerts them that it's working. If they're close together, you may sometimes even hear them say what road, Zeb road, walk, whatever.
Countdown.
And the countdown, yeah. And so we have been putting those up as we do upgrades to our signal systems. We're putting that in. We also, in addition to that 1% MTF, we also partner with others, TAP projects, the Transportation Alternative Program. That's where we're doing a lot of the trail projects. We've worked with many of the townships, Ann Arbor Township, Superior Township, Pittsfield Township, and Washtenaw County Parks and Rec. So we've done a lot of those with trails. We've also, right now, supposed to be a 2025 project. Superior Township is doing, they're doing ADA ramp upgrades in 5 of their subdivisions as part of a TAP project. We'll be administering those funds for them as well. And then RRFBs are those rectangular rapid flashing beacons, the blinky lights.
Shown in the picture there.
Yeah, so this particular that was a TAP project that we partnered with Ann Arbor Township to put to extend the Dixboro Road trail from Mathi Botanical Gardens up to the Marshall Nature Area. And this was one of the crossings on Dixboro Road. And so you can see it has the crosswalk highlighted. On either side are the lights, and when you push the button, the little blinky lights go.
And you have overhead lighting for
Yeah,
nighttime.
that has overhead lighting within the crosswalk as well. Yeah.
Just a question on the funding. So we're required to put 1% of our MTF towards non-motorized improvements.
Mhm.
Is most of the rest of it paid for with federal money?
So the TAP projects, typically, we don't have 1% in there. 1% for us is going to be those ADA ramps we do on our own, the intersection upgrades for the signals.
We've been upgrading our bicycle lanes, putting like that green pavement markings down to highlight those, that kind of thing. Anytime, if we widen shoulders, then they now can become used by bicyclists, pedestrians, whatever, we can count that toward that one.
And our 1% is roughly 350,000 a year. Or 360,000, I should say,
Okay.
or more. So it's 1% of our MTF. If our MTF is 36 million, that equates to 360,000. So we usually target around 400,000. And we get audited as part of our Act 51 reporting. That's part of the audit when they look at how much we're spending on MTF.
And doesn't it aggregate over a series of years?
10 years. 10-year average, yep.
Okay, yes.
I just know these pedestrian accessible signals on some roads, they've proven to be fatal for pedestrians because people are not paying attention who come up to those where there is no light, but this comes on. Is this an improvement of what, like the overhead lighting? Some fatalities have happened on Carpenter Road more than some, I think, in the last year. I've heard of at least one.
By American House over there?
Yes, by American House.
Carpenter between Ellsworth and
Yes,
Packard?
right. And the other.
We had a
was-
recent fatality there. In that particular case, the person walked against when it was do not walk.
Okay.
and it was dark and unfortunately was struck.
We've also converted some of these to actual signals.
Mhm.
So we had a rapid flashing beacon on Carpenter, and then we actually converted it to a full traffic signal.
Well, and we include at those buttons for the rapid flashing beacons, the fact that this does not stop traffic.
Okay.
Because we
Sign.
think, a sign, yes, because we want people to understand that they still need to watch for approaching traffic. Especially if they're on the side of the road and they have not entered that crosswalk, they need to make sure traffic is clear. These are to alert the vehicles of the possibility that there's a pedestrian present.
Yep.
So that they can, watch and be careful.
And, yeah, okay, so that's
And,
great. to
and
know.
it's one of, in Washtenaw County, I think we've gotten pretty good in the city and the road commission of using these, and we do see a pretty good compliance from traffic. So unfortunately, there are gonna be cases where, human error does happen, but we feel like these are an enhancement, because a lot of the situations do not warrant a traffic signal. It doesn't have the enough volume of pedestrians to warrant that full signal. So this is a very good step to make sure it's awareness and making drivers aware pedestrians could be present when
I see.
those flashing beacons happen.
I've seen that they work very well in Ann Arbor where people are accustomed to a lot of pedestrian traffic. I believe the other place we have it was on Gulf Side, that we had a fatality a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago. Also from traffic not recognizing, or like you said, they don't.
Traffic is
they
not
don't-
required to stop
Right.
at the rectangular rapid flashing beacons. And
Okay.
Unless there's a
sometimes-
pedestrian present in the
Correct,
roadway.
Correct. If you're on the side of the road waiting to go, they're not required to stop. And sometimes it's, education on the part of both the drivers and the pedestrians because, other jurisdictions close by do not necessarily have those same rules.
Okay.
But the pedestrians don't always know that. They come out of.
They
nowhere
don't, and that's why we
expecting
try to
stop.
include signage to let them know. And there's a big sign at the button that says, this does not stop traffic. Use caution, does not stop traffic.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So what more can we do? So as we talked, it's very complicated. There are a lot of factors. There's a lot of driver behavior. There's, all types of different vehicles on the road. There's pedestrians, there's bicyclists, there's motorcycles, commercial vehicles, all that. It's very complicated. So we're gonna use a multi-pronged approach. Projects, like we said, those would be targeted locations, like that Miller's Eve roundabout. Those are what the grants many times are for a single location. We'll put a signal in, we'll do a roundabout, whatever. We can do systemic improvements. So systemic improvements are recognizing something that we could do throughout the entire system, like those center line corrugations, those rumble strips. We can put those in strategic spots throughout the entire system. That's the type of systemic improvements, and we'll talk more about those. We can look at the crash analysis. I said we're gonna be proactive, but sometimes we're still gonna go back and look at those crashes and see where have things actually happened. And then we'll work with others. We have a close relationship with law enforcement. They're very good at alerting us when there are fatal and serious injury crashes, and we work with them on some of those investigations. The townships are very proactive on a lot of the non-motorized stuff, asking us, and then we'd also like to do even more community outreach and education. So just for your information, some of the program projects that we have using some of those grants, we applied for and were awarded a Safe Streets and Roads for All grant to do a road safety audit on Rawsonville Road from Martz to a little bit north of Textile to where our jurisdiction ends in Ypsilanti Township. So that is a high crash network. So a road safety goes in, they have independent people go in, examine all aspects of the road. They write a report making recommendations on what can you do. We're hoping that we can use that road safety audit to then apply for additional grants to actually implement some of those recommendations. So this is just for the report, for them to do that investigation and create the report. It's not to actually make the changes at this point.
But we're hopeful the results of it will produce recommendations. Then we then can apply
Right.
for construction dollars.
Exactly, right, because we'll be more competitive on those other grants if we actually have this report and recommendations in place.
And typically road safety audits, as Michelle said, they're independent. We're also inclusive of law enforcement.
Yeah,
It's typically a component. So I've had the opportunity to take part in them, and they're an eye opener.
you get a lot of different perspectives. It's not just us road engineers sitting and looking at the problem. It's you know, a whole bunch of different stakeholders that gets involved, multidisciplinary team and stuff. We also have, in 2025, our safety project is to put more of those centerline rumble strips on North Territorial in long stretches in a couple different places throughout 4 of our townships. And we also have a fairly good sized stretch on Jackson Road in Lima and Scioto townships.
Oftentimes, these are targeting higher volume rural roads. We did, was it last year? We did Willis from the city of Saline to the county
Yes.
line.
That's part of that safety project, yep.
Yep, so we've done a good portion of North Territorial Road, but this is picking up some of the gaps.
We also were awarded a safety project on Textile Road in Ypsilanti Township. And this will be for construction in 2026. So from Huron River Drive over to Bridge Road, there was quite a history of rear end crashes, some fairly serious. And Bunton Road, there had quite a lot of angle crashes. So our plan is to put a center turn lane through that entire stretch, and then also add a signal at Bunton Road.
So as you can imagine, there's some park on the north side there. And if you're turning left, if you're heading eastbound, turning left, you're essentially at a stop condition on a busy road. If people aren't paying attention, that's where you get that rear end crashes. And that left turn lane would help get traffic out of the through lane and wait for a safe gap. So that's where that mitigation of that center left turn lane will take care of some of those
And
safety
you can see
crashes.
too, in the kind of in the middle of the picture on the southern side of, there's a fairly large community there. And as they're turning into both turning right and turning left into their community, there've been quite a few crashes to get people in and out. It's a good sized community, so we think it'll be a wonderful safety project. We're in very preliminary design on that right now. I think within the last, since this year, you guys have approved the purchase order for the design team.
Yep, it'll be an expensive project because you've got a lot of waterways and culverts that really are the pinch points, and we've got to do a lot of
Yeah.
work to
That there's
extend the
a
culverts.
cemetery on the south side that of course we can't go near. There's a shared use pathway along the road that we do not plan to impact, but may have to realign
Adjust.
very slightly at that community. There's a big culvert thing that goes out to the lake. So there's some constraints. It'll be a fairly challenging project. But it should be a really good project, I think.
Commissioner McCollum.
Yes, thank you. Michelle, I know that stretch of road is 40 miles per hour, correct?
I apologize, I don't remember.
You're correct there.
Yeah, I guess because it is quite a bit of residential over there, and they cross over to go to the convenience store on the corner there, Bridge Road and I think Huron River Drive. Am I thinking of the
Not sure, there is
The
a
convenience store on Bridge and Textile, the
Bridge and Textile?
northwest corner there.
Right.
Yep,
Yeah.
Right.
yep.
But when I drive through there, people are hurt, you know, because it's straight through, people are hardly doing the 40 miles per hour. And I'm wondering if these changes will help people focus on that. Is it gonna be more signage for the 40, that this is because it goes from 40 miles per hour to like 55, you know, when you cross.
As we develop the project, we'll look at that. We always look at our current signage and see if there's something that can help. You know, there also be an additional signal in there for an opportunity to stop people in
That's
in
good.
the middle.
Okay.
We'll have to see some of
Yeah,
that. is
adding the signal
enforcement.
may help with congestion, but it
Mhm.
may increase speed. That's the hard part. When
Okay.
you have driver behavior,
Mhm.
if you're solving that queuing problem of people stopping in the through lane, now you're putting in the left turn lane. Now they have the ability to go straight and not be congested. So it's a balancing act. Speed is one of those things we're gonna have to follow the 85th percentile. So some of the things we can put design elements in there with the hopes of driver behavior changing. So we'll look at that perspective, but ultimately, when we're changing speed limits, we have to demonstrate that 85th percentile has changed.
So that's not gonna go up though, is it? Because mostly down, Textile is like 50.
Again,
Five.
speed is once you dip your toes in the water,
Right.
you have to follow what that 85th percentile is. Sometimes the driver behavior does go up.
Hmm.
That's just the reality of some of
I
our
would not like
projects.
to see that on that street.
No, I wouldn't either, but
And I don't think we'll be seeking, the state police to look at that with
No,
possibility.
no, what we do typically is we will check it ourselves with our count program. And if we see that the 85th percentile is dropped, then that's when we make the call to state police. We generally don't make the call if it's creeping up a little.
Thank you.
So, I've got a few slides here on the type of systemic improvements that we can make. So this is, the Platte Road and Willow Road intersection. We've had kind of a history of crashes here. It is a two-way stop controlled, intersection. So we have seen a history of crashes. We are doing studies to see if this would warrant a four-way stop or not. We're looking at that. In the meantime, we added, we call them double stops and lollipops. So put stop signs on both sides of the road to bring more attention. We added reflective strips to those posts so that people can see them better approaching at night. We also added, you'll see that cross traffic does not stop, because sometimes people are expecting it to be a four-way stop, just to alert them that no, it doesn't stop. We also, you can see we put it across the road over here to give them another indicator that it is not stopping. And then this particular location, we also have a beacon. So as you're approaching from a distance, you can see that, that there is an intersection coming up. So,
McCollum? Yeah, I think this is great because right there, because the traffic is not like booming across and everything, you can kind of think, oh, this must be a four-way stop. But with these signs, you'll know it's not a four-way stop.
yes, and so
So
we have put these up in a few locations recently, and you know, we're gonna continue to look at other candidate locations for things like this. So this is once again, a low cost, proven safety countermeasure that we can do. So we're also looking at more centerline rumble strips. We'll put those on more of our roads. We're also, as you were talking about, edge line, we call them mumble strips. The pattern
Wave.
of it, the wave of it is a little bit different than the centerline corrugations. And the result is they're a little bit quieter. This particular one, I took this picture, Felix and I went out onto, Michigan Avenue, I believe, right? Went out to Michigan Avenue. MDOT recently put these out on, some portions of Michigan Avenue. I stood on the side of the road and had him drive his truck over them, and they were not very loud, which was good because he said he could feel it in the truck. You're trying to get the driver's attention, and he felt it. But many times you're in residential areas or in your something, and this can become, an annoyance to people if,
Yeah, even in our rural roads, we do get the complaints because oftentimes there's not a lot of shoulder. And you have everyone's getting Amazon deliveries or mail. And so what happens is as the delivery truck is pulled off on the side, as far as they can get over, traffic's gonna shy away from that. And they're gonna hit that center line rumble and you're gonna hear it. And so we do get resident complaints of,
We do.
hey, I've got a lot of noise along my road now that I didn't have before. And that's where, even with our safer system approach, we're going to get these types of pushback. We have to be able to explain and justify why. And so that they understand. They may not agree, but the goal is understanding.
and then just a few more of those systemic improvements. We worked last year in traffic and safety to update some of our curve advisories. So, that's when you have a curve and we feel it's not safe to take it at the posted or unposted speed limit, and we advise you that it would be safer if you slowed down. Sometimes as we repave roads, it changes the super elevation of the road a little bit. Sometimes we put high friction surface treatment on, those kinds of things that can change those advisories. And so we've been out there, running those tests again and, seeing if it should stay the same, if it should go up, if it should go down. We'll continue to put more high friction surface treatment on, more enhanced signage. And then, as we were talking before, those durable pavement markings, we're looking at new materials, widened markings, all of that kind of thing. We're also looking to do clear zone reviews. We're gonna show that here in a minute. And then ultimately, our goal is to widen out the road shoulders because it allows for a little bit of driver error if people wander a bit. And it also allows somewhere for people to pull off if they have difficulties with their car or something like that. It's much safer. So what is the clear zone? So the clear zone is from the edge of your traveled way,
Typically the white line.
the white line and off. So you see there that up here is your clear zone. So we want that free of fixed objects. We want it to have a slope that can be safely crossed by a vehicle. You'll hear traversable and recoverable. So we want them to be able to, you know, go off a little bit. Ultimately, you'd like them to be able to recover and get back onto the road without, say, for instance, if this slope is very steep, they go off, there's an opportunity for them to fall down, flip their vehicle, whatever. It's a less safe condition. So these clear zones, they vary in width. And it's dependent on the speed of the road, the traffic volume, the side slopes, are there curves or not, you know, the geometry, site-specific conditions. So just to give you some,
These are risk factors.
right,
So it takes into account what are the risk factors of this specific roadway? And then a recommendation on a clear zone area for that roadway.
correct. So just as a kind of rule of thumb, if you look in our roadway design guides, they have different guidance for us on these. For low-speed roadways, so 40 miles per hour or less, depends on your traffic, they vary from 7 to 18 feet. So not super wide, but not too bad. Higher speed roads, 45, 50 miles per hour, 10 to 28 feet. So think of a road like North Territorial. It's 50 miles per hour, high average daily traffic. We should be more on that 28 feet end of the clear zone.
So typically the thresholds for traffic, so a high volume roadway, like over 5,000 to 6,000 cars a day. If you're looking at 400 cars a day, that's a different circumstance where your risk is lower because the volume is a lot
Right.
lower. So that clear zone tends to shrink. But on our roads like North Territorial, they're well over 6,000 cars a day, sometimes higher. And so that clear zone is much bigger because the risk
Right.
is pronounced. It also shows up in our crash statistics. You see the lane departures, fatalities, serious injuries. That's why we've gotten a lot of safety grants on a road like North Territorial, because not only is the risk higher, but the crashes are present.
Right. So for an interstate, something, it goes up to about 46 feet. So if you're out on I-94, something like that. Note that at curves, that clear zone should increase at the curves as people are going around it. So we're trying to keep that free of trees, head walls, utility poles, those kind of things that would be an obstruction. Also note that we have signs in there, sometimes you'll see a sign within our clear zone. Those are what we call crash worthy, which means that the sign will break. It's not typically going to cause an injury to the person if they hit a sign.
And if you, the metal signs, they have a U channel with holes in them. So when they're hit, they snap off.
Yeah.
And then if you have the wood signs, you'll see typically at the bottom is a giant hole. So any amount of force will just snap that right over.
So why do we want to do that obstruction removal in those clear zones? Remember, we're focused on those lane departure crashes. We have a high incident of fatal and serious injury crashes on the lane departure. There's a higher risk of death and serious injury on those crashes. And we're looking at our safe system approach because we're trying to allow for human error. If people make a little mistake, then, we want them to be able to recover. Unfortunately, this is what happens if we don't have those obstruction removals. So we're going to look at an example analysis, North Territorial Road near Donovan Road, that MDOT local safety initiative. This is one of the corridors on our most recent one that they identified. We also have noticed there's a particular area. This is near Donovan Road, which is right here.
It's east of Mast,
Yes.
west of Webster Church,
Webster Church, yes. So,
in Webster Township.
yes, we had noticed also, this large number of crashes. So one tool that we have a crash database. It's for the state of Michigan. It's called Numetric. And so we can go in and get, we don't necessarily have to wait for those, Watts, crash statistics, but those are kind of whole crashes. They don't go into the individual locations and the individual crashes themselves. They just give us an overall picture of how many crashes are there, So this allows us to go in, there's a mapping feature. We can put in filters like Washtenaw County. I can draw polygons. So I drew a polygon. These out here, they're kind of far away, but when I went into those crash reports, they actually were coded incorrectly and were right along this area here. So that's why those are included. So I can draw this polygon. You see the different colored dots. Those represent the different types of crashes down here. So the red is a K, that's a fatal injury. That's our symbol that we use. The next one is A, which is a serious injury. The next one is B, which is a suspected minor injury. C is possible injury, and then the blue ones are for property damage only. No injury, just property damage. So we can look at we've got some red and orange and yellow ones along here. Then we have a lot of these. It gives us the crash IDs for all of these that are in here, and each one of these is associated, they have an associated report. So I took my polygon, I did a little crash analysis. So I looked at 5 years, from 2020 to 2024. In Numetric, we can get a little bit more recent crashes. We don't have to wait quite as long. So there were 27 crashes in my little polygon in this time frame. 48% of those were lane departure crashes. So overall, 70% of the crashes were no injury. That's good. However, any crash involving a tree, which would be a lane departure, had a 70% injury rate. That included 1 fatality and 3 crashes with incapacitating injuries. And so I said, okay, let's go in and analyze those reports. Each one has an associated state of Michigan traffic crash report. We call these UD-10s. So, there's a lot of information on these. It gives you the date, the time of the crash. It tells you the conditions. It was dark. It was dry. This was not during rain or ice event. You can, have the age of the driver, all of that stuff, whether or not alcohol or drugs are suspected. In this particular case, alcohol was suspected. So it has all of this stuff. It resulted in K. K is a fatal injury. So with each of these, you have all of this information, includes car information. If there were multiple passengers or multiple drivers, it has different sections for each of those. And then it has a crash report narrative at the end. And this is where oh, yes.
Sorry. Michelle, yeah, the, alcohol suspected says yes, but it doesn't say any kind of test was taken. So how did they know?
That's why it says suspected.
Person died.
It was a fatality.
It was a fatality. So typically they do not do a test.
Oh, okay.
Because otherwise sometimes it'll say if they did a blood test, if they did a breathalyzer, this or that. This they suspected, for whatever reason, you know, the officer suspected. But usually for a fatality, they don't do the test.
Hmm.
So then there's a narrative. This is where I tend to zero in. They oftentimes draw little pictures with them. So the driver was traveling east on North Territorial Road. This is a crash that occurred this past October. West of Donovan Road, which is within our polygon there. They came to a curve in the road. The vehicle left the road to the right, struck a tree and a rock. And then the vehicle continued going east where it overturned, striking another tree with the roof of the vehicle, and the impact of the second tree caused the vehicle to bend around the tree, holding the vehicle off the ground, and the driver was pronounced deceased on the scene. So the result of that crash was a fatality.
Yeah, it's hard, especially with the way the cars are designed. It might have survived, the driver may have survived that initial crash, but then by rolling and then
hitting
collapsing on
multiple
the
trees.
roof, that's when oftentimes we see that serious injury or fatality. And these reports have come a long way, because it used to be the sketches of the officers. So this, I'm maybe showing my age here, they have different tools, but they are very powerful in understanding how the characteristics of the road could help prevent some of these things.
Commissioner McCollum, do you have a question?
Yes, I still, with the report with the suspected, use of alcohol, that they need more information to tell us why they suspected that, because it's just a suggestion, because that can skew the stats. This person could have had a heart attack, they could have had a diabetic incident.
Oftentimes it's, you smell the alcohol in the
Yeah.
car or on the
Oh,
person.
okay, well,
So there's a suspicion, there's reasons behind
Right.
that.
but they
often.
don't
They don't
have it
just
on the
assume
report.
that they're, yeah, they don't,
They need-
no, because I mean, that's just how these reports work. Many times, if it's a fatality, we speak with the officers afterwards. And they may offer their reasons, like for instance, we had a serious injury crash earlier, I don't know, it was the end of last week. And the officer told us they suspected a medical condition contributed to that.
Mhm.
So,
Or they might see an open beverage,
right.
open
Is there some
container.
reason why they don't put that on the report? Is it a legal reason, liability reason?
I don't know. These are produced by the
But usually,
department.
oftentimes, our staff goes out and reviews the road situation, and oftentimes we'll talk to the officer and have a little better understanding.
Mhm.
You also go out and take pictures of the vehicle to understand, where it hit and how,
And I think the key here too is even if drugs or alcohol are suspected, are involved, we want to do what we can to accommodate that poor decision by the driver, Just because someone gets behind the wheel does not mean that they deserve to die if they happen to be in a crash. And so we're looking at, are there things that we could do if this person was under the influence, if they had swerved slightly, could they have recovered? You know, but there was a tree in the way that stopped them from recovering. So that's the kind of things that we're looking at.
And also in this segment of road, not all those crashes involve drugs and alcohol. And there were a number of crashes.
Yes, that's absolutely right. So what can we do? We can put enhanced signage. We did that in 2024 around those two curves that we saw in our polygon. We did put some chevrons and enhanced signage. Reflective widened pavement markings. So that is on as soon as the weather permits and we get our new pavement marking contract going, we'll be putting those reflective widened pavement markings on. We are exploring edgeline corrugations. We have asked our contractor for a price for the edgeline corrugation, so we can start to look at that as one of the possibilities as well. We could do targeted tree removals. We see that this involved a tree, and so that would help us remove those obstructions. And then it would also prepare us for widened shoulders in the future, because that is our ultimate goal, is to get to those widened shoulders to help it. So I said, okay, let's look at our little segment here. We did a tree survey last month and we looked at trees within 12 feet of the edge line. Remember, this road should have about a 28-foot clear zone. I'm looking at 12 feet. That, or if they were on the foreslope of the drainage ditch, but they were all within the 12 feet. So it goes from, here's Donovan Road here. It goes from, you know, right before the curve starts to where the curve ends. So when we looked at that, our recommendation is we found 14 trees within our right of way, and it's about a 0.4 mile segment. So it goes 1,500 feet west of Donovan to about 800 feet east. It encompasses those curves. So that is the recommendation after looking at our tree survey. So then we said, okay, well, we have a tree policy. How do we fit in with there? Well, the tree policy has criteria listed within the policy. It has 8 different criteria, and we think it easily matches at least 3 of these. Crash frequency, we see that. We've even been identified by MDOT. This is a high crash area. Horizontal curves. We saw the horizontal curves. We've got that. Potentially hazardous trees. We've got people crashing into them. They're potentially hazardous. They are hazardous. So, you know, you can also look at some of the other criteria that we could fit into, but we very easily meet these. So in our opinion, we think that that would be a good way to go. So I looked at the street view on this. So this is some of the area that you're looking at. You can see how close these trees are to the road. So in our tree survey, you'd probably talk about taking maybe some of these trees right here, maybe right along there. This is not clear cutting trees. This is targeted tree removal very close to the roadway.
But it will look like clear cutting.
To some,
And then we,
Yes, it
to
will.
some, yeah,
some.
absolutely.
So here's another view. You've got some very close to the roadway here and here. These, you see how close those trees are to the roadway. So what we're trying to get to, this is another crash report narrative, also on a different segment of, actually, I think this was within one area where we have cleared a little bit of the clear zone on North Territorial. So this driver reported he looked away from the road and while distracted, once again, made a mistake, drove off the right side of the road. He lost control. He traveled through a ditch, struck a warning sign. Remember, those signs are crash worthy. Re-entered the roadway. He recovered and then came to a rest on the roadway. He was able, because there was no obstruction there, and the result was no injury. So this is what our goal is for all of the clear zones that we have. Do you have any questions on any of that? Because I'm going to finally pull Adam up as he's Hopefully not.
I-
too big yet.
I will also just add our tree policy, as far as process goes, what happens is, when traffic and safety or anyone in the organization identifies a potential risk that they think is worthy of reviewing, they'll have traffic and safety go out and look at it. They will make a recommendation to our county highway engineer, and that's Brent Schlack. Brent will then review it. And if it falls within the criteria of it's a danger, within our policy, he has the authority to go ahead and ask for that to be removed. So if it's within the right of way, what then would happen is we would contact operations, and we would have someone talk to the property owner about the tree removal, offer them the wood. If they want it, we will have them sign a wood disposal agreement saying they want it or don't want it. And then ultimately, then operations would work to remove that tree. So that's the process. That often will take place in curved road areas. Intersections is oftentimes where we get complaints where we end up doing an investigation for site distance. So in this case, it was initiated through our traffic and safety group looking at this safety data, the crash data. So that's where we're at.
Okay.
Any questions on that?
It's going to be important that there's a robust public education effort made in advance of significant tree removal.
Yes, so that the significant, that's where oftentimes I think we stumble. Because significant in some minds, a dozen trees is not significant, but to others, it is. And oftentimes in the past, the property owners are just fine with and agreeable and support it, but it's not the property owners that generally will make the noise.
Mhm.
So, with our public engagement policy, it does say significant. If this board is of the opinion that this particular segment, can you go back to that area? So we're talking about a 0.4 mile segment
4 miles.
where we're proposing how many tree removals?
14.
14. So if you think this is significant and worthy of a public information meeting, we're happy to do it. At initial glance, we were going to definitely talk to the property owners because that's part of our process as well, and put out a project advisory. But if you think this is worthy and get the sense that you do, we can certainly hold a public information meeting. What we would do is basically pare this presentation down specific to the North Territorial portion example, and then just hold probably a virtual public meeting on that subject. We obviously will notify the township officials so they're well informed, well in advance, and then do our public meeting. But we typically like to talk to the property owners as well as part of that and get them involved as well. So that's something that we can certainly do. But not oftentimes are we doing a public meeting for targeted tree removals. This one's a little more, I grant you. But if it's an intersection, typically we talk to the property owner and the tree comes down.
I would suggest that the public education effort is not site-specific, that it's a generalized education campaign, much as the clip that you showed. The video was an emotional hook. It wasn't an intellectual hook. That's the difference in how you turn public sentiment. So I would suggest, Tiffany, I don't want to make work for you, but there's a PSA, a public service announcement component to this, because there will be pushback, big time. This hall will be packed once again. That's why the policy was adopted in February of 21.
Mhm.
That's where this came from, with all the specifics about how big are the trees, how far from the road are they, when are there necessities identified for removing them? So I love engineers. I'm married to one, but there's far more to it than looking at a road segment and saying, well, it makes perfect sense from a safety point of view to remove these trees. But the public is not always aligned, and we need to remember how all of us got here and why we're here.
Understood.
It's-
And we're looking definitely to follow the policy. That's the policy that we have.
Understood.
But we need the support of the board for this project of this type as well, that we aren't going to, will be all aligned with this. So certainly, we can do the public education, component of it, and then work from there.
Commissioner Yamas.
So given our past experiences, I believe that public engagement is important. And I believe, along with this education and the emotional portion, but I also believe that we need to notify the county commissioners because they
Yes, they would
receive
be
the
included.
complaints.
Yep.
But to have this survey, because this is perfect to me, and along with know that it is generally 20 feet, we're trying to alleviate the whole 20 feet, trying to take as little as we can, if that can be part of the public engagement. Often my experience is you give the bad news to what would be bad news to some people, but along with, I know that this is coming out, but recognize it could be 20 feet, it's 12 feet, but it'll save lives. And as we get that down to 0, but this is an excellent presentation. Definitely one that I think that we should support, but I also feel like we need large public engagement
Okay.
on this.
With that, certainly, the timetable, for tree removal. The thought was if we can get that public engagement done, we could potentially do that work this spring, leading up to the restrictions. If we aren't able to get the public engagement done, then we'll have to wait till the fall to get that window of opportunity again from an environmental standpoint. So we'll have to look at the timetables and we'll certainly give you an update of what our plan is. But we want to start here with a conversation here first.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
So Adam is going to talk to you about some added benefits to some of that clear zone area.
Thank you, Michelle. Adam Leip, Director of Operations. So just wanted to help tie up today a little bit back more towards just the maintenance side of things. And even a picture like this is perfect for this time of year to discuss this, some of the added benefits to getting a little bit more width as we move along the county road system. So for us specifically, fewer trees falling in the road, fewer call-ins, fewer risk moments for our crews to be out trying to cut roads. Trees like that, we kind of refer to kind of like a hanger. And what that means is kind of suspended over the road, and it's probably got some pent up pressure and stress in that tree. So it's a little challenging if this were dark hours, little dangerous, little challenging, but something we always have to face. So
I think that picture was from the ice storm.
yeah,
years back.
probably 2 years ago. That's Maple Road, I believe,
Yeah.
looking right to the south at the roundabout, just at
Yep.
the top of the hill there. And so, yeah, it's certainly something that we run across. So of course, less is more, but knowing, we have quite a few trees in the county. We just try to be aware or see them if they're dead or dying, we try to grab them before they find their way down to the road. Drier pavement, you see that second note there. You can see this road where even with no foliage on the trees, it still does affect, us getting that true wind down there, a little bit more sun. So anything you can achieve is more successful and better, especially, having just the conversation we just had. Areas and corners that are usually shaded because they're either getting blocked by the sun at some point with some of these trees, does affect what we do maintenance wise. And even today with the blowing and the drifting that we're trying to wrap up from the weekend, it'll affect it a little bit, cause snow to act a little bit differently. So we get kind of snow on the roadway that ideally wouldn't be there. But so it's just part of the process for us maintenance wise that we kind of work through. And then inevitably, and I'll show in some of the other pictures, better drainage in general. Really, that's just the width and able to make sure we have those slope and back slope of the ditches, just allow them to function a little bit better. Sometimes trees do obstruct that. We do throughout the year have to remove trees here and there because they either become diseased and die because they're laying in the moisture all the time in a ditch, or inevitably they're just impacting where a culvert would be or would function better if the tree would allow that to flow better. And then in the summertime, so here's kind of a good example of what we would consider a little bit better clear zone for us. We have that space to work where we can actually mow it. So you can see us working around, it's a structure there. It's not a full bridge, but a structure there in front of the mower where it's nice that through that curve, we're able to kind of mow that back. And what has happened over the course of time, we've had vegetation management to be able to keep the trees that you still there, still beautiful, just kind of further back. And so that's some of the key words I use when we talk to constituents in general about, tree removal, tree trimming. We can still have the beauty. We just need the beauty a little bit wider for us, just to give us a little bit of space. And then specific to this working session, really just that recoverable space. Because signs like that, chevrons, they are crash worthy. Usually someone can correct themselves before they get into something more impactful like a tree. So for us mowing wise, it's phenomenal. As you know, through budget review end of last year and into the beginning of 2025, we've talked considerably about upping our mowing program that's contracted. So we're going to make 2 cuttings this year on the unpaved roads, or really on the system in general, which is more robust, which will help in the long run. And as we start to, gain some width, that'll try to keep some areas that are already just grass and brush, try to keep them that way, so they don't actually go to root and to stalk. And eventually, 50, 60 years later, you have a large tree that could become an obstruction to some type.
So we contract our roadside mowing out.
Mhm.
Typically that's 4 to 6 feet from the shoulder.
Yep. Yeah.
And then ultimately our own forces does the boom mowing to knock down vegetation
Yeah.
beyond that.
Push it back in theory, give that extra space, that the room for the sign shop to set the signs up, that recoverable area we kind of talk about. That's what our boom mowers are really good at. We do have also with our contract some options for supplemental mowing on that if we have an area that needs to be mowed and we can't get to it. So we set some things up in our contracts to make that, achievable and make it a successful part of the program. But yes, we've added to that budget, so we want to bolster that program, and it's kind of part of that process, just trying to help ourselves or help the people that'll have it after us 40, 50 years from now. Because as you know, trees of large scale take quite a long time to grow. So we try to just allow them to grow outside those clear spaces when we can control that.
And then we also have contracted forestry work as well.
Yeah, and so even a key point back to a few slides ago, with having contracted tree removal, when we have these more specific targeted removals, it's helped us that we've developed that program over the last couple of years. It really gives us that chance with the modified equipment that they have. They can essentially reach in and remove a tree without obstructing other trees or brush. And so you're not getting that huge unsightly impact. And that's been quite beneficial as we've talked to people. A lot of constituents have actually commented on clean cut and move on. So that helps a little bit in that process because some people certainly are sensitive to that.
Yeah, even with our local road program, when we do forestry, it's more surgical. Earhart's a good example where this last fall, we were able to work with our contractor, walk the job with constituents that had concerns and really describe to them what our goals are.
Yeah, kind of plan the activity, plan it moving forward. A good handful of years ago, back with the previous Ann Arbor Township supervisor, myself and Mike Massey, the District 6 foreman, rode with him and kind of explained our processes. So he was able to help us from his angle as well, which helped with the constituents because we wanted to trim on Warren Road. And we ended up, I think the total number was like 31 trees we actually touched. Some were just trimmed. I think we removed like 5 or 6 that were actually dead or dying, where you can see they start to grow and then they struggle for light, which I'll actually move to the next slide and show you that. So you see some of these segments. I believe this segment is in District 3. So you see the tree to the right. You can obviously tell it's had better days. You see where it's been struck. If I use your pointer here. Here we go. So you can see it at some point, the tree had been struck by something. And then just in general, it's just been kind of choked out by all the foliage around it, where it just can't quite be as healthy as it wants. And so that's usually what we see in some of the trees that end up falling, is they get that little bit of damage, disease. Most of the time it's just repetitive damage where they just can't seal the wounds quick enough. Because the tree does live, it does need to seal the wounds, or it can be susceptible to some of the moisture that is definitely prevalent in our area. And then you see down in notch areas like this of trees, where you can really get a lot of moisture in there that really leads to degradation of the tree. And inevitably that tall side here would split off, and it ended up in the roadway for our groups to manage. And then the tree is kind of weighted and backloaded the wrong direction. So it makes it a little bit of a challenge, but that's a little further off in the conversation, but just to share some of the kind of field experience, field realities that we kind of worked through. Certainly improved sight distances for driveways. You can see, I think there's a farm drive here, and there might actually be one in this area, but I could be missing on this one, but I'm pretty sure we have an entrance down there. So, any little bit of improved sight distance helps us. That's something that we work through. That's where sometimes target removals come in. But just in general maintenance, it's good for all of us to have that little bit more width to work with. Storage for snow removal, very much an evident thing that we're dealing with right now. Back to what I said when we were showing the picture of that tree was hanging across the road there at Maple and Wagner. Sometimes it's hard for us to utilize some of our equipment we have, our wing plows, our large front plows to get that snow out there. So sometimes, roadside width affects that. And then we end up getting what they refer to, and I've kind of noted it before, it's called a backdoor blow-in. And all that means is just the wind has an opportunity to kind of swirls around whatever object it is and actually deposits snow, which inevitably ends up somewhere in the roadway. A little bit of a challenge, it's manageable. But obviously, like I say, if the four slopes were a little open in certain areas, like this road would be fine a little bit further width, because you just have somewhere to get your snow. And then of course, the drying out allows a little more wind and sun on the road. So it kind of benefits us in the long run. And then obviously safety for workers, just in general, when we do deal with ice, wind events, even hot summer days, which is kind of scary for us. They do refer to some trees as widow makers. And it's a sad comparison, but it's reality that sometimes trees will just split, or if they're dead or dying, there's an opportunity for them to maybe fall while we're out working as well. We try to be as safe as we can, but sometimes in the middle of the night, it's really challenging for our groups to be out working around that. So it's certainly something as we do our trimming, before we do a township project, or even the primary projects, we really try to trim and get our canopy up above us a little bit to create that space, but also to create a little bit of a less opportunity for something to come down when we're actually out there working. Yep. And then here is a good description of how I always refer to roads sometimes where they struggle to dry out. So this kind of ties us back in with the engineering team that's here with us, how when they pave roads, we try to trim in advance. These are photos from Here Never Drive. This is actually back from 2011, but still really, really good to depict what we talk about all the time with moisture. So you see the photo on the right, you see how there's cracking right at the joints, right at the center of the road. That naturally occurs over the course of time, but you see over here, they're starting to, we refer to kind of alligator cracking, and it's starting to just laminate there a little bit in that wheel track. The reason for that, you can see this is midday in the fall. You can see the moisture, just that shaded area, that's moisture. And where we just can't get that road to dry as best as we'd like. And then you see here, very much in the same area, just kind of looking the other direction, but you see that cracking and everything that's essentially left as the road, struggles to dry. And then further down here, which is hard, I'll zoom in, might help a little bit for those that are virtual here. Let me get a pointer. So oops, I'm sorry. Well, so right in this area, and I'll zoom back in now. When I zoom in, look in that area, there's actually cracking and deterioration starting. And that leads to some pretty serious issues we have, because then now we have to start pothole patching. And it's considerable effort to try to keep those segments of road together. So what we do is we go out and we partner with engineering, and we've really tried to put a good canopy clearing effort into these large scale projects that we do, because then we can keep the beauty and just keep the space and give us a little bit of room to work. So you don't run to the point where, you inevitably have removals or dangerous obstruction.
So Adam, in these cases, you're really talking about canopy trimming.
Yep, yeah,
And-
so this
and-
area.
In these cases, I would say, those tree lines are greater than 10 feet back, which is a really nice place to
Mhm.
be.
Yeah, and so that's another good note to hear, kind of Matt, what we're talking about, Matt and I talking right here. So also with having these slopes on the side of the road here, I mean, yes, we would love ditches here, but inevitably that's what we're given, and that's okay, because then as we work to trim, we're able to do that without really.
You're not talking tree removal, just
Yeah.
canopy trimming.
Yeah, so you're just able to make space. So, I believe this is coming out of Dexter, where this photo is here. And I think that probably going back into Dexter might actually be from the park, but, nonetheless, good photos to have that we've had for quite some time that I thought was really good to kind of explain what I talk a lot about, maintenance wise with how we do some of our trimming. And then finally here, we have another picture. I just wanted to show, this is actually from the Czech Republic. This isn't any road in our system, but it shows really good impact of what given over time. And so that's how operations wise, we really were sensitive to that and know that, okay, now we have established programs and ways to keep grass and brush before it turns to stock and starts to grow. So very much an exaggerated photo, but a good conversation because, you know, we're not the only people that see this, where you have large scale trees that have been established for hundreds of years at that
That's
point.
what we're trying to avoid.
Yeah, so, you know, in the long run, this is certainly something that, you know, we try to stay in front of as best we can, so. Appreciate your short little moment there, but that's the tie-in kind of back to the.
We're
maintenance
almost
side of
done.
things. Yeah,
Almost done. So just a reminder that road safety is everyone's responsibility. As we said at the beginning, there's a whole system. There's a whole lot of pieces, and we have our role to play within that system. And once again, just kind of as a reminder, these are real people, things that are happening. These are United States statistics. There's approximately 42,514 roadway deaths a year, which means about 116 roadway deaths per day. That means during this working session, probably about 10 people have died on the roadways. So we're doing our part, what we can do to try to reduce those as much as possible. So any questions? Is everyone exhausted?
It's a big topic, so thank you for great job. Commissioner?
Commissioner Yamas, did you have a question?
No, I just
Oh.
wanted to comment. Actually, I want to thank you for the valuable information. It was so informative, especially in the hard work and getting these grants, you know, the Highway Safety Improvement Grant, the Highway Risk Rural Roadway Program, the Congestive Mitigation and Air Quality Program. I've always been so proud of this administration and how you've been able to get those grants, but it's really nice to see how they're at work. So I appreciate that, you know, seeing how it's.
Thank you.
fixing
We will
roads.
continue to explore those opportunities. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Do we want a little break or we want to just proceed? All right, let's take a brief break. People, if we could come back by 20 minutes after, that would be a great help. Thank you. All right, welcome back. We're getting started 30 seconds early. I hope nobody is missing that would otherwise want to be here. So we will continue with our agenda. I will turn it back over to Mr. McDonnell, our managing director, about the public auction of some of our property on M52. Matt.
Thank you, Chair Fuller. Tiffany, if you could share my screen, I appreciate it. We did have bid results from our February 5th auction, where we received bids for 2 parcels. And you'll see it on the screen there. This is our, the property is 6900 M52 Sharon Township. These are 2 parcels of ours that we were looking to see where things would lie as far as looking at generating some revenue. We did have some results for you to share. Here are the bidders. As you can see, Wholesome, who was very actively pursuing an easement and also was considering submitting a bid. They did not submit a bid, but their partner, 52 Minerals, did submit a bid for $2 million. We got a bid from Dome Construction at 1.1, and then Diedrich, private entity, submitted bid for $475,020. They did submit a letter as well, basically reflecting that they were a private entity looking to restore essentially farmland, but ultimately, I can share that with the board. This is the letter they wanted to note in their offer. I will distribute this letter to you here. But ultimately, the bids came in a lot lower than had anticipated. If we look back on the history of this, we had received unsolicited offers previously. And as you recall, I'll scroll up here. The dates, back in June of 23, we had received a offer of $3 million. And that had steadily gone up. Back in 2020, as we've gone over in the past, we got an appraised amount of 1.4. So we are far short of what I thought would be where bids would come in. And at this point in time, staff's recommendation is ultimately to reject all bids, and we will wait till the market gets back up to where we think would be at a point where we could consider parting with these parcels for investment into some of our other facilities. At this time, the fruit is not ripe, is my thoughts, and the recommendation coming to the next meeting would be to reject all bids. It won't stop us from starting our plans for looking at facilities at here in M52. I'm sorry, our Manchester yard located in M52. We'll still certainly move forward with that. We're looking at requests for proposals for doing a feasibility study, and that will cite potential improvements on the properties, and ultimately we'll move that forward. But at this time, we don't think it would be wise to part with these parcels, knowing that there's, I think, quite a bit of money left on the table if we were to select that high bid of 2 million. So that's where we're at. Any questions?
I have a question. I don't know whether you have Michelle's handy dandy little red dot that moves around. But
Percy.
do I remember Wholesome wanting an easement at
Did.
one point? And what are we doing to monitor the integrity of our parcels versus their interest in traversing our property?
So after this board meeting, ultimately, our rejecting all bids, we're gonna have a conversation with Wholesome and 52 Minerals to say that we are not interested in granting the easement. There will be no trespassing. And unfortunately, the situation is what it is. You had a remedy, but it
Chose
wasn't
not to
appropriate,
exercise.
right? So,
Okay,
yep, we'll definitely be enforcing our property rights, and no trespassing would be the message we convey.
okay. And when do you anticipate this being on our agenda?
Next board meeting,
Okay,
not this afternoon, but
right.
the following.
Okay. Questions? No? Okay.
Sounds good.
All
I
right,
would like to see the Dietrich letter.
absolutely. Right now,
No, not necessarily.
I do have copies of both the bid results and the letter, and I'll
Okay.
distribute. Yep. That's all we had for the working session.
Okay. Well, if there's nothing further, I would entertain a motion to adjourn this working session.
So move. Oh, support.
Aaron, if you would, please.
Commissioner Joya McCollum,
Yes.
Commissioner Gloria Yamas.
Yes.
And Commissioner Burt Butler.
Yes, we are adjourned. We will be back at 1 o'clock for the regular board meeting this afternoon. Thanks, everybody.